Hello, everyone. Welcome to Fellowship of the Golden Age. And today we're going to get to know Summer Shine. Hey, Summer. Yeah, finally, someone with a weird name like mine.
Yeah, truly. Half from my parents, half from me. So, yeah.
Oh, okay.
My,
Which half is from your parents?
my parents named me Summer. Baywatch was a really huge thing in the United States in the early to mid 90s. And they
Uh,
were, yeah, so they named me Summer because there was a character named Summer in Baywatch and they liked her. And so they're like, that's a pretty name. So, yeah.
okay. Well, I like how you've completed it with the shine at the end. That's sort of like, that's perfect. Uh, Hey, and you've just been to the conference and everything. Like, just give us a quick reflection on what it was like for you. Like,
Well, I went there. I don't think I had many expectations. I just knew that I was really excited. And I knew that these were my people in terms of like, there's a group that I'm going to do the invocations and decrees with. Like, I had no idea what to really expect, but I really appreciated that leading up to the event, I started to see Kim's, expression become more um, authentic, and especially with his interview with you about being yourself and the psychic projections. And his themes have been more pointed on like we can be ourselves. And so I was anticipating, at least there would be some sort of and just like me to be myself. And so I show up and I was just elated. I was so happy. I was so excited. And it just felt like the perfect container for me to see myself reflected back to me, see other people, to really get in touch with my intuition on a deeper level. And I just was able to flow in the container. And it was just everything that I could have ever wanted. Um, and I'm just so grateful for the opportunity to see how just the myriad of people and all the psychologies to get to interface with. And
yeah, yeah.
it was just, it was cute. It was awesome. It was fun. It was cute. It was adorable. It was sweet. It was fun. It was great.
Yeah, wow. Um, yeah, look, I can tell you from just participating, long distance via the webinar and and even just, recording sometimes, like the energy generated was just global. It was massive. Like, I was just, and also it was just so much more than what I was expecting. Like that's what I love about the masters. You always think, oh, is this it? But no, there's always something more. And I feel like you guys, created an incredible space there, but it just radiated out so that, all of us around the globe were just like, wow.
Mhm.
It was
Yeah.
it was pretty it was a transcendent experience. Like, you could really feel, that process of all of these hearts opening up, our heart chakras sort of, and the power of that, like, that manifesting on the earth was is something incredible.
Yeah, it was a lot to take in the flesh. Like what I just recounted was like the social experience, because
Mm.
that's
That's what I
something that,
wanted.
yeah, the social experience is just like, oh, it's just such a beautiful opportunity. And you know, I, but the messaging was, I mean, just so profound, so profound. And to be in the vicinity when it's happening, like you can tell the energy translating from the masters. I think they're very gentle on our nervous systems because it's not overwhelming, but the message is so clear. And I just loved how much we laughed during the conference because there was so much jokes that were made.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
and I was just front and center for the whole thing if I wasn't like stretching in the back or trying to like meditate. Yeah, it was a lot to take in. I found myself needing to lay down, and I wouldn't sleep. It felt like I was going to sleep, but I was meditating the whole time because my consciousness was just, it was just downloading everything that was saying, so I can remember everything that was said, but it was very tiring. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, okay. Interesting. So what, yeah, like, when the day was over, were you pretty much like just out like a light or?
Well, so it was a mixture of things because I would get so much energy, and honestly during the invocations, and I'm curious about your experience too, like I don't know if it's like a separate self that's being hit and it's like draining that separate self, but sometimes I can get really tired and simultaneously energized, because the light of God is moving through my being and there's so much,
Mm,
energy. But I do notice that I'll start to check out, even though I'm paying attention. I'm like, it's almost as if it's unconsciously moving through me to start to work its magic or something, or its work through me. But it was an interesting experience to notice the 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 tiredness, the sleepiness. But yes, I would pretty much straight away go to bed, um, but need to physically exert myself before I could answer, because my body would have so much energy because you're sitting, you're doing these invocations, you're listening, and so you have to balance it out. I noticed.
yeah, yeah. No, yeah, to be honest, yeah, I do recall feeling quite tired and everything. And also the final day, like I just had this incredible craving for carbs. Like, and normally everything's been really balanced, but it's just like my body just needed, I don't know, this carbohydrate intake, it needed that energy to come in. So yeah, it probably does have some sort of a
That's a good point, because they fed us really well in terms of like the carbs
mm,
were available. And I don't normally eat that way, but I found that it kept me balanced. If I ate too much, I would feel it in my belly, but my brain felt like it got what it needed because of, I think, how much they feed us.
mm, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah. Like I felt like I had to sort of step outside of my usual diet because I'm
Yeah.
eating very, very consciously right now. And I was just like, oh no, I've just got to have, I think I found it in like sweet potatoes. I just ate loads of sweet potatoes that was the best way to get it in.
Yeah, I was devouring my sandwich that they would give me. It was like these gorgeous like catered sandwiches that I'm just like I would not normally eat this way, but I'm just it's just give it to me. It was so good.
Yeah. Hey, um, and you're really like something about you, like, yeah, you're real sort of like person who's like very big. You come in through the body. Like, do you just want to share a little bit about that, your direction?
Yeah. Um I Yeah, it's interesting, my experience with the my embodiment and coming into myself, into my physical body in this lifetime. I think I have been more of the disassociative type. Um, I didn't grow up with a lot of awareness of my body or care for my body. I kind of just had to figure it out, especially in terms of attunement and attention to the subtleties. Experiencing a myriad of experiences growing up with um, intensity in my household. I my inner world wasn't usually something that was questioned. It was more of like told to me how I'm feeling and how to feel or how to be. And so I found that in my awakening, which happened around, it's been about over 10 years at this point, um, I immediately found myself gravitating towards the more alternative lifestyle, like yoga. And I immediately got into yoga teacher training and started to work with with the body in that way, and learning how to eat, and learning different ways of eating, and just started to really very unconsciously just track like how I felt. I grew up with a terrible body image, a lot of like disordered eating. Now that I look back, I didn't think it was a problem then, because I think I was just conditioned to be so self-conscious. I think that's a programming that women have a lot, is to just be
Mm-hmm.
so
Mm.
self-conscious, and to be, what, how am I being, how do I present? I mean, I remember when I was a child, or a teenager, preteen, just going out, I would change my shirt if my belly stuck out further than my jeans or something. Like if it wasn't completely flat, I would just change my shirt. Oh, I have like OCD, definitely like a lot of OCD around how I looked, how I was perceived. I had a hyper fear of like being criticized. And so it kind of kept me in my head, and again, out of my body, and just using my body as a tool to get love. And so that developed into some certain levels of like unconscious manipulation, I think, to get and receive love, and just perceiving external validation as love. And so I would change me to get love. And so when I got onto the spiritual path, I just became radically different. I just started to not really care about what I looked as much. Like I kind of didn't even have a mirror. I started to wear head wraps, I started to just wear more flowy clothes. And I started to really express myself after being repressed and bullied and made to feel like, like something was wrong with me. I was, picked on atrociously in high school and middle school. And it was just like, I was the sensitive one. I was the one that you could, get a reaction out of.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so, yeah, so the body for me in the last couple of years, especially since having a child, that really changed it for me, because it was like as if I had opened the door to my psyche that I could no longer shut. All of my trauma came up, all of my separate selves that I didn't know were separate selves, like all the things that I had repressed from my childhood and past lives, probably, most likely 100%. It just all started to come out. And so the only thing that I was always being guided. The masters have always been with us, right? We just don't know
Mm.
that they're the masters until we find them and we can understand. But
Yeah.
I got this vision before I had my son, before I even had met his father. I had gone to Hawaii and lived there for 6 months, but it was the longest 6 months of my life because I had changed so much. And I got this very clear message that I would go to the mountains of Appalachia in America and do ancestral healing, was the message that I got. I immediately basically re-meet my son's father, got a clear message from my intuition: stay away from this man. I didn't. And my son started to come in, and I was like, okay, we're gonna do this. 3 months into the relationship, we choose to have a child. Don't recommend it. These things. And then yeah, so I started to naturally gravitate towards herbs for healing. I think it was just natural. I think the masters were guiding me, my I am presence was guiding me, my heart was guiding me to get into my senses. And so I was working with plant medicine. I was making medicine. I was really getting in touch with wild foods, because the wild foods is so abundant here. There's so much medicinal wild food, and I started to clean up my gut. Fast forward, I had my child, and just everything blew up in my face. My health, my chronic stress, the consequences of my actions were like setting into my life to where I didn't want to live anymore, because I had let my trauma create this bubble and isolation chamber, in this house that I had created for myself. And I was kind of just imploding because I wasn't getting the support that I needed. I wasn't, I wasn't bad all the time, because it was a mixture of like, I'm in nature, I'm making medicine, I am going deeper inside of myself than I ever have, I'm healing, but at the same time, I'm unraveling psychologically. And
Mm.
so the only thing that could really help me at that point was somatics and body based healing and somatic experiencing and being able to get into my body, which was like fighting tooth and nail because I was so stubborn. Like there was a self, I guess, that was so stubborn and just held on to this attachment of being just wallowing in hell, in self-pity and stagnation, that wanted to just stay stuck and freeze and ruminate and ruminate and ruminate and ruminate and just like obsessive thinking and it's obsessively be angry and spiral and spiral. And then it's just like this person came into my life, a partner of mine, and who just kind of like popped the bubble and also like opened the cage and simultaneously like brought me like all these opportunities for me to really see my psychology in a way that I was completely in denial of. Like I think I was really wrestling with like personality disorder kind of stuff. And
Mm-hmm.
so get out of my head and into my body. It's really started with me just taking really long walks up the mountain and hiking with my baby on my back and the carrier up on the mountain and just like really getting into my body. And I'd always been, I'd always loved my body, but I just didn't understand how much it was a necessity for me to like get out of my head, off my screen, and be in the world, be in my body, breathe, actually breathe out of my belly. you know so that's a
Yeah.
long-winded, it's still a journey, I'm still in it, but now I understand I need to be in my body. It's not something you can push away. Like I can't ignore it, because it's when I ignore my body's signals, I realize it's actually psychologically I'm ignoring something else. When I'm ignoring the fact that I need to go pee, or I need to use the bathroom, or I need to stretch, or I need to like jump up and down and just shake a little bit to get the energy moving, I think when I deny myself that, it's actually it's psychologically a lot deeper than I actually realize. And that's what became clear to me at the conference. I was like, it's the subtle ways in which we deny and we repress and we hold and we I think it matters. At least it matters to me. So even the subtle things of like acknowledging, like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom right now. Oh, I need to get up and move right now. It's like, I think psychologically it's helping me be more myself, like in the
Mm,
smallest
mm.
way. I know that sounds like so little, but like it really took that. It's still working its way, but it's like allowing myself to just like, oh, body, you need this. Great, we're gonna do this thing.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, I hear you. Like, as a teacher, I found it very difficult to balance my natural understanding that children need to move and everything. But I mean, I was also expected to be like, to control them as well. Like, I couldn't just have them all jumping up all the time, but I allowed a certain amount of movement, depending on who was watching, I could sort of get away with it. Um, but yeah, I'm only at this age of 56, I'm only just starting to reconcile with my body at last to exactly what you're talking about and just making peace. It's been a war, it's just been a war for many lifetimes, just dissociating, wanting to escape my body, like just not being able to, it just, and I realize, it's time for me to sort of do with my body what I've been doing with my mind so that the two are in harmony. Yeah. And
What does that look like for you? Like when you say doing with your body what you were doing with your mind, what do you mean?
to have my body as beautiful as my mind is, like, because I feel like the two are incongruent, like I've been in this overweight body and I just sort of hit the point, like I got down to a good weight about 15 years ago, but my mind the trauma in my mind was just like ready to go, and I went into a massive psychosis, and boom, the battle began again with the body because my mind had to be healed. And so now it's kind of like I'm just like, well, now let's bring the two together. Like, this body is a reflection of my mind, and I've healed it so well. And um just yeah, I know I can't just sort of sit back and expect it to happen magically, because that was the last little thing, was this magical thinking of just thinking like, it's just going to happen like magic. Like, yeah, we have to be proactive. We want to create something. We need to step into it and create it.
I love that you said that because, I started to realize how I was screwing my body up by the chronic stress and the separate self rodeo that I would put myself on, and focusing on things that didn't matter, being in codependency and just outplaying the drama. It would actually, because it would create the stress and I wouldn't take care of myself, and it would cause like my hormones to go crazy. And so I have since, even though I don't normally eat the food that, eat the ways in which that were graciously and lovingly provided for us, it created a sort of consistency that I needed for that conference, because you're waking up at pretty much the same time, you're invoking at the same time, you're eating at the same time. And I appreciated that because, when I came back, I had like an experience of like boomeranging, with some separate selves because of some choices that I made and consequences of those choices. I actually realized I haven't been properly taking care of myself in the last couple of days, and it's shown in the ways it's bizarre to me that this used to be my life. I used to live like this, basically feeling like a strung out addict. Like I used to feel, because I just wasn't caring for myself. And I think I lost motivation around caring for myself because I was detaching so much from this world, and I had this perception of who I was supposed to be as a spiritual student and ascended
Yes,
master
yes,
student. And I thought that really like it's about letting go and dissolving, and the material world doesn't matter and blah blah blah. Like I really was letting that self take over and be validated by the teachings, even though they weren't saying that, you know.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I think that keeps happening in layers. Like I even had a self that was like, yeah, I've let go of the spiritual self. Like, so there was a self sort of validating that, oh, that's gone. And then I've seen like, oh, but there's little nuances more of that one. Like, since doing that interview with Kim about, the psychic projections, and just realizing like, I have a right to be who I am. Like, and whatever that is, like I don't have to fit into the box of what, is sitting at your desk and behaving yourself. Like, like I can just express myself as is natural without sort of pushing, without becoming imbalanced or anything. But yeah. um
Yeah. I've been doing that in my own way, and I've been enjoying to see like my comedic self come out so much, because I find myself to be an extreme person. I I'll find myself making videos and saying the most like authentic thing, and it's so dynamic and animated, and it's just my southern accent comes out, and I'm just like having fun just in this character, being myself, and just enjoying the fact that like life isn't to be so serious, and
yeah,
to make of it what you get to, of what you have, like make the best of it. And so it's been nice to see my perception of reality be able to shift, and just try to, humor is a great way to shift.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, and that was the great thing with this conference. There was so much more humor coming out. Like, I was like lolling all the time, and I could hear you guys laughing too. Like, I I saw Susan posted something today, and it was just a little clip of the beginning of Jesus's dictation, and he's doing like when the man stands in the pulpit and he says Jesus. That was classic. And it made me sort of think, like, you know how the masters were having like a little sort of like dig at Jesus, saying with his flair for drama. And I was like, well, there you go, there's the drama, honey.
It's so funny. It's so funny because I've always felt an affinity to Jesus. Like I've
Yeah.
always felt like he's a brother in some way. I'm just like, God, I feel so connected to your personality in some way, or at least my idea of who you are, especially through the My Lives book. I was just like, I can hang with you. Like I'm not dramatic. It was so good. I found myself like cackling. Like it just, I was on the probably heard me cackle because I'm not usually a soft laughing person. But yeah, it was so good to see Kim just even off the camera. He's just so provoking and like he's a pot stirrer sometimes with his humor.
Yeah.
And I loved that because it was just like he was not taking himself seriously at all. Except if he was like really like it was so like when he found a topic and he's really like he'll just go for it and just like talk your ear off and it's so good, you know?
Oh boy. Hey, so we're sort of, I don't know, we're going all sort of like in all sorts of directions. So I want to give you the space now, like, to sort of step back and, share about your story. What parts of your story you want to share with us right now. So the
Yeah,
floor
thank
is
you.
yours.
Yeah, I feel like I've shared so much. I mean, I'm really just, I grew up, in this Southern Baptist culture in the south of the United States. My ancestry, I come from a long line of like war veterans and a lot of, systemic abuse and, racism and the whole drama of the human experience. And that was all stuff that I recently found out since I got into my house, which was in the last 4 years. I got really obsessed with genealogy because I just didn't know anything about my background of anything. And as I started to like dig and dig and dig and dig and dig, it started to like eventually make sense some of my experiences because I believe, before I found the masters, I was very much into ancestral lineage healing. Like I said, I got the clear message that I would come to Appalachia and do ancestral lineage healing. That was the message that I got.
Mhm.
And boy, did I, with the masters, we get this context of past lives, and I would not necessarily, I mean, I think my childhood was so rich in trauma that I, the thought of a past life, my psychology just made so much sense to me because of the current life that I have lived, or at least, in this embodiment rather, because I've lived so many lives, in this one particular life. But yeah, I just grew up there was a lot of systemic passed down trauma, I think, of just unresolved stress from war. And I chose this particular family to highlight, I think, my psychology and where what I had to work through, needing to deal with this dynamic around men that
Mhm.
like I've just always had interesting dynamic with men, not all men, but men that I've had, karmic relationships with or sexual relationships with. There's always been the dominant themes have been with those particular karmic relationships, a lot of codependency, a lot of like narcissism, a lot of just trying to control and harvest my light was a lot of my experience. And it kind of goes back to my father, who was very domineering, but also a very loving man. But there was a lot of things that I think he repressed and he had a lot of shame around. And he was a very strong personality and definitely it have definitely affected me growing up. And his dynamic with my stepmom, my mom was basically they had a very tumultuous relationship, and she had a really hard time with alcohol, and she had a lot of what came to to there was a realization around, unfortunately, because she was both of my parents were born to teenagers. They both had my parents at 17, and back in the 70s, that was a huge deal, especially in the South, like huge deal. It's a very Christian, very shaming culture, especially for women. And so that kind of instilled into their bodies as they're growing, my parents. And so their psychology is being influenced,
And so
even though,
what psychology, like what MO in you was that triggering? Like what was your reactive pattern to being in such um a domineering space with the male, and then I don't know, the
yeah,
traumatized female?
yeah, I repressed. I gaslit myself. I let myself be gaslit. I also had a lot of anger, I think, resolved in me because I knew my truth was real. I just had this intuition. And I also had this sense that they were mentally not well. And so my psychology, I think, grew up with this like pattern to like submit to the dominance of a man, or to submit to the like the intellectual dominance of the man, of like just spinning things around to making it seem like I'm just crazy, or I'm, so that would create this sense of actual competition between the man and me. There's a lot of like, I noticed I became very like aggressive, and like just like so much aggression, and it's definitely and not trusting. I found myself very much in hypervigilance a lot in my life, and like the reptile brain of not being able to trust anything, because what essentially happened because of my parents' drama and their own psychology is I was essentially abandoned. Like my dad was physically present, but my mom was alienated. So like out of my life, like casted out of my life. And so I created this abandonment wound where I think it like created this psychology of codependence of like, I will be whatever you need me to be to get the love that I need to survive. And I would latch on, so it would play out so deeply, predominantly in my romantic relationships. It was like I needed that person to be my everything to survive. Like I needed to heal the abandonment trauma of my parents having me young, and prioritizing their dramas and their separate selves, to where I was like trying to heal the developmental wounds that were like missed developmental markers, where I was not given the love and the attention and the care that I needed. I was pretty much like casted to the wolves and like was sent immediately to daycare. And, it was just, I did my best, and I learned, I became who I am today. But it was definitely an experience of like severe, like cannot even fathom the thought of being abandoned. And so I would create all this drama to try to get energy and attention from the person that I'm with. And then this most recent partnership, I kind of like, I think it happened before when I became pregnant, I knew something was wrong. I was like, why is this drama playing out? There's some physical violence happening. There's emotional violence. What's going on? And not to say that I wasn't having like those patterns of emotional violence throughout my life, but it really became clear to me. It got really bad when I became my son, and I was just like, I'm going to therapy. This is ridiculous. And so I came to find out I had complex PTSD, but at the time, this was like right around when COVID happened, or before COVID. Yeah, when I started going to therapy, and she, there was a misdiagnosis, but I don't blame her because it was looking like it. But it was like complex PTSD, borderline presenting, ADHD, neurodivergence, all those things, but a lot of PTSD, a lot of past life PTSD, a lot of current life PTSD,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
a lot of
Yeah.
extremes. Yeah.
Yeah. One day the psychologists will start to say, oh, Avatar,
Yeah,
Avatar
the Avatar teaching.
syndrome.
Yeah, that's been really helpful, I think, for me because I started to get into this, and especially because the outside world is so fucked up sometimes about just like wanting to pathologize and shame us for who we are. And
Yeah,
now
yeah.
I'm just like, there's something that's turned a leaf in me because I mean, very recently where I'm just like not shame. There's no shame coming because and it's not even in my sphere around trying to shame me for my past of like how I've presented an emotional dysregulation because of the trauma that I'm dealing with, um, there was, but now I feel like because I've accepted more and I understand more, especially because of the teachings on the avatar psychology and past lives and all this different the layers of it. I'm just like I don't I don't care what people think
Mm, mm.
because so much of what people judge is either a projection or they just don't know. They just don't know, you know?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the reality is like everyone has PTSD, and it's just because it's just reaction, isn't it? PTSD is reaction to stimulus, and everyone is in this permanent reactive mode. So, but the way I see it, like everything you can transcend everything. You don't lose who you are, but it doesn't stay. Like I was diagnosed CPTSD also, and um, occasionally I get, an episode hits, but I see it. I step aside from it and I'm just like, okay, that's just a lens, that's a separate self. I'm looking through, I'll just step aside and watch what happens. And generally now, I actually notice it's mostly I just observe the body experiencing it, like because I can
Yes.
step out of the other bodies and I just see my physical body, I don't know, go into like panic attack. It's kind of interesting, but I'm not it. Like it's yeah. And I hold space, it's just like it's all right, we'll get through it and yeah.
That there is no stimuli on this earth for me for my trauma reactive selves to come up than my intimate sexual relationships
Hmm.
and my parent and child and parenting my child. That's what kind of like I started to realize just the depth because I started to get like memories from childhood that that were kind of like becoming like regressed by parenting my child. So it's like whatever developmental
Mm.
milestone that going through, I would like relive it that I didn't realize. I'm like, why am I saying what is these words coming out of my mouth? Why would I ever say this to anyone? It was like because I had heard it, and it was just like
Hmm.
in my body, lodged in my body. And so I had to do a lot of crying, a lot of screaming, a lot of running, a lot of trips to the sauna. And I don't think I was consciously doing those things for that, but I had to do it because I was compelled to, and it was like God guiding me, out of the cage of the confines of my mind, of my mental body, just like the stresses of what had accumulated. And so my child and my partner is my greatest teacher, and my child is my child, but like the partners can come and go. And I'm like, they show up for a reason. So I'm still here. So I'm still learning for however long, but I'm learning how to detach because I've just noticed how deep my codependency has gone in terms
Yeah,
of
yeah.
attachment and and externalizing my attention outward and
Yep.
making myself food, basically. I used to be so paranoid and thinking that my partner was my enemy. That was like the constant theme that I noticed in my life. And like what we definitely probably have like a karmic thing, but I really thought that this person was like an extension of Satan embodied, which is like a really big deal to think. And like, well, then why are you with this person if that's the case? And because I knew deep down they were my separate selves. And that's not to say that he's an angel, but I realized how much I created my own suffering by projecting my traumas from the past onto this person and recreating my, like, becoming a self-fulfilling prophecy, basically.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah, I've never looked at it, so I don't think I've really perceived it from that angle. Like, yeah, because for me, I found the deeper MO was like I'd attract like, a Satan also, but I actually was trying to change Satan into an angel too. Like I just, I believed I could do that somehow, that it was my responsibility. But yeah, and then they just sort of they can see that MO, and so they're just like, great, you're like, I'll be an angel, and then all of a sudden they just start Sataning you again, and it's just, yeah, that traction.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, what I loved so much about the invocation that we did before we started this interview is it was just so much about honoring people's free will, because I started to realize in the last couple of weeks, or no, really in the last, since I got back from the conference, because of the lessons that I've been learning about free will. And I think it really started with your personal share about that, about, free will. And it started with that psychic projection interview. And then it just kind of kept going and going and unraveling. But I realized I was not respecting, because of the codependency, I wasn't respecting my partner's free will, and I was trying to change him and just thinking that he was this person. So I was also psychic projecting at him, right? And the reality mirror was like, bam, girl, all right, here's your slap in the face mirror projection right back at you, And it's like, and then I would try to like, this has been like the past. It was just like, you try to like, well, you shouldn't act like that. You should, even if you're stimulated and you're triggered, you don't need to be acting like that. And it's just like, we don't really get the option or the right to tell anybody how they should or should not be acting. If we
Hmm.
ourselves, if our side of the street isn't clean, it's like you're kind of opening up for whatever is going to come, because you kind of started it, because you were not clear on your own energy. Like you were delusional to your own separate selves that were trying to fix and violate another person's free will. And I actually
Yeah. Yeah.
realized it because it kept happening to me. It kept happening to me from a friend, from him, or a partner, or other people. And then I realized, like, because I'm doing it, I'm
Yep.
still doing it. And that was a huge reflection. That was a huge, to come back from the conference and immediately get that in my face again. And I was just like, oh, what if I'm, and it's not that I'm the problem, but like, what if I'm creating this?
Yep.
Whoa. What if
Yeah.
I'm not a victim? You know?
Yeah, yeah. And it's just sort of it's becoming sort of a very liberating experience of, when you just step back and like, yeah, the projections might be coming at you, but you can just step back and just see like, oh, that's just a separate self doing that. So it's an illusion, so it doesn't even touch me. And it'll only touch a separate self in me. So, that's you have the choice in what you're going to do within.
That I feel like something has really clicked. I don't know really when. It's so recent. Time is, sometimes hard to quantify the linear mind, but I'm realizing, the thing that I thought was out to get me has actually been my greatest teacher in learning how to love. Because when I experienced the trauma that I did, and whenever it happened, like my heart closed. Like I don't know, and I shared a little bit about it in the conference of just like, when I had my son, I went through this health crisis, and went to the chiropractor for the first time, and they take your x-rays, and I got an x-ray, and my sternum, there was a little kink. And my chiropractor is very, very intuitive man, and he was just like, something happened to you, like trauma, and I think he meant it like psychologically, because it was like my physical, I created a closure
Yeah, yeah,
around, and I have been learning how to accept and love not only in other people, but to accept myself. Because when you go through that kind of trauma, you really internalize that something's wrong with me. Something's wrong with me. So I am going to close my heart to myself. And then I would shame and berate and like all the vile poison that I was projecting out in my relationships and like blaming everyone for all the what they were doing. It's like, oh, we have problems because you're doing this and this and this and shaming and just like obsessively just like picking them apart. And then I realized through therapy, I was like, I do that to myself. I've done
Mm-hmm.
that to
Mm-hmm.
myself. Like how I was treating myself. And that's how, when I look back, that's how my dad treated himself and he treated me, you know, because he
Mm-hmm.
kept saying in the States, hurt people, hurt people.
Yeah. Yeah. I know it's kind of like, it's kind of weird once you start to see it, that, the projection coming from someone else is actually how they're feeling about themselves. And ergo, the projection that comes from us is actually how we feel about ourselves. And like, oh, durr, durr.
So yeah, it's like, yeah, it's learning that softness. It's learning not to take life so seriously and learning not to feed that narrative of like the other. So I'm playing with like, how can I love myself? Not just keep, because a lot of these teachings, they're not literal. Some of them are some, it's like there's nuance, there's a paradox in all of the teachings because
Mm.
if it was absolute 100% applicable to every single situation, I think all of us would have ascended by now. But there's nuance and there's paradoxes, and that's not to say that the advice given for a particular situation isn't for what it is, but I've just learned like, okay, I'm learning to ask and open myself up more to the masters and to God and to my I am presence of like, how can this be easier? How can I love myself and this person even more? How can I be more patient, more kind, more loving, and just take that breath whenever I could react and just like be more curious. Like with my son, it's so special because I get to see in real time the feedback of me changing my patterns. Like it's different with a relationship because I think it can be a little bit more mucky, with another adult consciousness, but with a child, it's such an immediate feedback, beautiful,
Yeah.
pure, just like I'm like, oh my God, I'm doing it and it's working and it's working and I'm learning how to react less and be more humble and to not just be a tyrant just telling him what to do. So
Yeah. Yeah. Beautiful, hun. Um, so yeah, we've sort of ripped through loads of time already. So if there's just sort of one thing you'd like to close with, anything you'd like to share?
yeah, I mean, I'll just say to anybody that finds this, um, you know, and has watched up until this point, um, thank you for your time and that you're clearly not alone. And I have a feeling that a lot of people that come and find me are the ones that often feel alone or feel like just you know this sense of like your right to be here and your place on earth, like you have your right to be here and to be who you are, and like it's such an honor and a privilege to be embodied, I think, at this particular time in on the planet, and
Yeah.
who knows how long we have and what we will see in our lifetimes, because things are quickening and rapidly, like just so fast. And I'm just so excited for Saint Germain's golden age to manifest because it's happening. And yeah, I'm excited to just share more of myself with everyone and to see that reflected back to me and the beautiful souls that I meet. And like the teachings um, have just validated so much of my soul and my intuition and who I know that I have always been on the inside. And I'm just so grateful to be here. So thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
Yeah, I'm grateful for you. And I just want to say, like, so Summer here is relatively new to the teachings. Like, how long has it been roughly? Like 6 months or
I No, I think it's been about 9 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so okay, so here we are. We're giving birth right now. But and but what I've loved about you is sort of like, all of a sudden, like, yeah, bam, you just turned up in the Ascended Master Students group on Facebook, and just put yourself out there, and I was just like, wow, like,
And the teachings are going to change now. I talked to Yulita and Kim. I think it was definitely Yulita. We were having conversations, and I'm excited because I knew it. I knew it. I don't know how. I know because I'm often afraid. I have been afraid to talk about what I know because
yep.
the predictions that, oh, that's your ego. I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think so. But I know the teaching change now. We're going to start to get some deeper stuff because that's how it works. New people come in, they add different energy to the mix, and then
Yeah.
the master's like, "Oh, ready for the next level." So I'm excited. I know it's coming really, really soon. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to see.
I felt like it really been gradually shifting anyway, but just this break in like tradition, like, letting go of tradition and the way things should be, and let's just be ourselves, whatever that is, whoever that is, like, and experiment with ourselves and our expression, because that's why we're here, to express our Christhood. And who can say what box to put the Christ in? Like, Christ won't get in there, so
Yep.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, awesome. Okay, well, thank you. I love you, and it's been a beautiful joy to sit here in this space with you today.
I love you too. Thank you so much. And I'm so glad. Thank you that it worked out and for this whole experience that you're creating for all of us to weave the golden age.
It's all good. Okay, bye everybody.
Bye.